Putting the red light guy into practice. To start using the red light guy technique, I developed 3 basic steps. First, I noticed my behavior, which stopped me from being on automatic. Second, when I caught myself starting to look at a woman in a sexual way, I put my hand on my heart. Third, I thought to myself, I'd like to shift this energy to some positive thought or behavior. For the next 2 months, I tried out this technique. When my eyes wandered toward a woman who I knew would trigger me into my addiction, according to my addict's radar, automatically scanning for women, I would earnestly put my hand on my heart and tell myself that her body was none of my business. Gradually, it started to sink in that it really was not my business. As I did that, I noticed that I was starting to relax more in public. I had more energy for positive thoughts and feelings because there was less guilt and shame going on inside me. I even realized that my addict's radar for objectifying women was starting to fade out. As its power faded, instead of drifting off into fantasies that were never going to happen, I began to notice other things, such as store windows with merchandise on display. How amazing! I noticed other people, couples holding hands, and happy families. I was no longer just on the lookout for attractive women to sexualize. Inside, I felt calmer. Life made more sense. That weird, electric, amped-up feeling I had been at the mercy of for so long was, thankfully, gone. I was more focused on what was happening in the moment. It was also great to lose what I thought of as my X-ray vision. You probably know what I mean. It's the absurd belief that I could actually see what was under women's clothing. Again, this was a crazy fantasy and, without it, life was easier. And it kept getting easier as I practiced this technique of putting my hand on my heart, making affirmations, and not objectifying women. The first time I knew for certain this hand-on-heart technique was working occurred while I was in an upscale market searching for protein powder. I was walking down an aisle when I felt strongly compelled to look down and to the right. It was an instantaneous, huge, radar pull, with my addict yelling at me to look down. Right now. 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 But instead of automatically looking, I continued to reach for the protein powder. I picked it up and, as I turned to continue down the aisle, I saw what my addict had been pleading with me to see, the beautiful woman who had been bending down to pick up a can of soup from a bottom shelf. She had on a low-cut blouse and no bra. It was what I used to think of as the shot of a lifetime. But I only witnessed the last part, when she was almost standing. So I did not stare down her blouse. I just stopped in my tracks and thought to myself, it works. A year before, I would have been angry that I missed an opportunity to catch sight of what would have got me going into my addictive response. The sight of the woman's exposed cleavage would have launched me into a full day of fantasy, a trip to the video store, a brief orgasm, and a night of shame. But that day, I was thrilled to experience that her body was none of my business. The red light guy the first had installed was working. Then I had one of those you had to be there experiences. With my hand on my heart, I said out loud, "Thank you." I heard a voice next to me, looked up, and saw another attractive woman. She smiled, looked directly at me, and said, "You're welcome." Of course, neither woman had known the inner process I had just gone through. But I don't want to believe that it was a coincidence. I'll always believe that the woman's words were meant just for me and were, in a sense, a reward for resisting sexually compulsive behavior. As I walked toward the cash registers, a few tears came to my eyes. This episode may not seem like much, but it was a wonderful lesson for me. I had proven to myself that I was no longer at the mercy of my addict. I had the red light guy technique to stop the addict's acting out behavior, maybe even before it got started. What you can do now. As you continue to read this chapter, think about installing your red light guy. You can call him that or something else. You can put your hand on your heart, like I do, or choose another action. The point is to take action. It's a step toward letting go of your looker, which is the part of you that objectifies and sexualizes others. You could call your version of the red light guy the looker stopper, or the I'm not going there again guy. What matters is that you begin to notice when you look, when you objectify, and when you start spinning a fantasy that's going to lead to acting out. That's when you need your version of the red light guy. That's when you need to stop. Take a minute, right now, and ask yourself to pay attention, to notice, and to take a step toward transforming the looker energy into positive thoughts and actions. I've worked with men who, once they installed a red light guy and stopped their time-wasting behaviors, took steps toward changing jobs, starting new businesses, and finding more time to enjoy hobbies such as sailing or golf. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that this will happen to you. I am implying that you will feel better about yourself and your life will improve. It's definitely possible to shift from objectification of women to admiration. You may be unaware that you have a guidance system pre-installed. It's an unconscious aspect of yourself that is running your life. Again, you are living in reaction to your history. Most of this is fine. You stop for red lights. You eat 3 times a day. You go to work in the morning. You pretty much do what you're supposed to do. That's the red light guy. You couldn't function if you were constantly thinking, I better stop for that red light. I need to tie my shoe. I need to put my pants on. So you do these things automatically.